The Ukrainian southern offensive against the Russian defensive lines have been a lot slower than anticipated. You could almost say it has bogged down. Liberating the settlement of Robotyne has taken almost 2 months. It is completed now. But if this tempo continues, the Rasputitsa, the modern rain season, will come before Ukraine reaches the Black Sea. Today in this video we'll look through the reasons why is it like that, the grim reality check of the southern front. It's coming up. But before we go there, we have to visit our good old friend Solovyev, the Russia's lead top propagandist. I haven't watched his videos for 4 months, I think. I can't remember a single one. Well, he's now back for 1 week after the death of Prigozhin. He has shared very weird messages about it, like he doesn't know what to say. He has not shifted blame to anybody. He has only covered the topic very slightly, like he's afraid to touch it. What analysts are saying that he hasn't gotten instructions yet. Sometimes Putin's government takes time. It doesn't work the fastest. It takes time to give out these instructions to propagandists. This is the reality. And these propagandists, they cannot say what they want. They have to wait for these instructions. So today came out a video after 1 week of saying nothing. Solovyev finally shifts the blame to NATO. I guess clear instructions really came in from the top. Let's watch the video to get an idea of what he was instructed to say about the death of the boss of Wagner. And it must be clear, today some uncertainty which was around the airplane crash which killed the leadership of Wagner PMC has ended. So the uncertainty has ended. I have been instructed to tell you the truth. Now let's see the truth. The investigative committee confirmed the results of the expertise. All those listed were among the dead. In Ukraine, there is now a mad rejoicing. I'm not sure Ukrainians are madly rejoicing about the death of Prigozhin, but they are relieved because if Prigozhin truly would have gotten any kind of power position in Putin's command structure, that would have been very bad because he was one of the more capable military leaders and strategists in Russia. Definitely better than Shoigu and Gerasimov combined. So the fact that now Prigozhin cannot affect any kind of military decisions in the Russian military command structure is definitely a relief. Because the guy could actually think they're out of control. I mean, the rejoicing and showing who ordered the murder will wait for the official results, but it's probably a terrorist attack. The way Solovyev is speaking right now, he hasn't spoken like that for the past week, and immediately after the crash, everybody was talking, everybody was sharing information, except for Solovyev, because, you know, as a lead propagandist, you cannot just share random information or your own opinions. It's very dangerous. So he waited 1 week for the instructions to come in, and now it's clear who is to blame. I think it's more likely that our explosives were hidden during the repair, because no one can control what kind of spare part it was, which means NATO was involved. It's obvious. Sherlock Holmes has cracked the case. NATO was involved. It's weird how in Russia NATO is this evil foreign entity, always undermining their efforts, always fighting the good Russians, the traditional family values these Russians have. NATO is always fighting against them. They are the devil, the Satanists, the alcoholics, the drug addicts. They call it the Kiev regime and then the NATO puppets. It's so weird because for us Estonians, NATO is the lifeline, honestly. According to United Kingdom's intelligence report, Russia might not hold the biggest army exercises Zapad 2023 this year. The reasons are being brought out as lack of armored equipment and infantry, lack of soldiers, lack of army personnel to take part about the exercise. But a lot of pro-Ukrainian supporters will turn into a joke saying, oh, Russia doesn't even have that much equipment anymore. In my eyes, actually, it makes sense because any kind of exercises your military does, they're usually connected to training for war. Russia already has a war. And the best training comes on the battlefield. So if they have their troops and equipment and armored vehicles on the battlefield, they have no need for this huge exercise. Now, Zapad, which means the West in Russia, is a huge military exercise meant for deterrence against NATO forces of the West, against the NATO border. Now, if they cannot do it this year, of course, it's very bad for the Russia's deterrence against NATO. But again, this shows that Russia is not really afraid of NATO countries. Russia has no issues in bringing troops away from the western border or from the eastern border to Ukraine, which they have done. Russia's borders have never been manned so thinly and weakly as they are now, which really shows that they don't think anybody will attack them. And they're right. I don't see any NATO country attacking Russia anytime soon. This means they can cancel this exercise and like nothing will change because of it. Now, the fact that Russia doesn't have enough armored vehicles is not saying that they don't have them. It's saying that the best and most modern armored vehicles they do have, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, air defense systems, they're deployed in Ukraine. So they do have the numbers. They're just actively taking part in battles or defending close to Ukraine airfields, and they just cannot be spared for these exercises. Ukrainian intelligence shared a report yesterday that in the city of Energodar, let's also look at this from the map, it's the city of Energodar right here, right from the Novakhovka reservoir, which is now mostly empty. Ukrainian intelligence attacked a Chechen unit's headquarters. The Chechen units are part of Rosgvardia, which is like the Russian inner control of the army. They're the military police. Against their headquarters, the kamikaze drone flew right into the window. This is the beginning clip of the kamikaze drone. This here is the window. It flew, boom, into this window, and this exploded here. Now, the Ukrainian intelligence reported that they destroyed this Rosgvardia Chechen unit's headquarters. This is CCTV footage from the same explosion. Kamikaze came in like that, and boom, it exploded. Yes, it did destroy one of these windows and one of these areas, but this is a huge building, so I hate to do this, but I unfortunately have to fix this statement that minor damage was done to the building. I don't see visually any casualties or deceased or, you know, injured even. There's this old lady right here, you cannot see it very well, but she was walking like that, and then the explosion happened and she's like running away. Nothing happened to her also. So sometimes we have to take these Ukrainian intelligence reports with a grain of salt and look at the footage ourselves. All of the links I'm talking about are in the description below, so you can check out everything yourself. And it's worth doing because sometimes the information is bloated, just like the Russian intelligence reports. Making up your own mind about this war is quite difficult, actually. Both sides have bloated information. So that's why I'm here, trying to find the middle way, the truth. Now, my friends, I'll read you the Ukrainian estimated Russian losses of the past 24 hours, 29th of August. And I have to say, if there were any kind of Ukrainian losses in the same way we see Russian losses here, I would read them, but Russia doesn't keep track like that. They do report losses daily, but these losses are high enough that Ukraine would have lost like 500,000 troops already, and this is like way too unreal. 530 liquidated personnel, 14 tanks, 17 armored personnel vehicles, 25 artillery systems, 3 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, 4 UAVs and 4 cruise missiles, 43 vehicles and fuel tanks. Oh boy, and there was an entire convoy of Russian vehicles actually destroyed, and they're connected to the 205th Russian Brigade, the very, very controversial brigade in the southern front that were given the task to dislodge the Ukrainians from Kozatsky Lagery, the bridgehead. Now, they tried to do that and they got stuck, and we'll go through the whole story in this video. Their convoy was on fire. And 11 special equipment. So let's go to the most controversial topic of the past week. The Russian 205th Brigade near Kozatsky Lagery. You can see this is the Ukrainian bridgehead right here. And this 205th Brigade was given the task to dislodge or push back the Ukrainians from this bridgehead, push them back over the Dnipro river or destroy them. They were given the task to cross this Koinka river you see right here. It's another sub-river of the Dnipro river. It's a smaller one, and Ukrainians are actively on this Dnipro Koinka in between dry area. They have trenches here. Let's look at the whole story, and you're gonna like this is a crazy story. Altogether, entire 2 companies of the 205th Brigade were instructed to cross the Koinka river and push out the Ukrainians from Kozatsky Lagery bridgehead. That was their task, and that was done 3 days ago. Now we know the outcomes of this entire battle, this entire firefight. They crossed the river with 2 boats. They had 2 boats and 2 companies, but the boats could carry 15 personnel at the time. So you can imagine 15 goes across, then they have to come back, and another 15 go across. And they did that without fire support. I guess they thought that the Ukrainians could not see them and they could do it very quickly and silently. But immediately if they got onto the water, Ukrainians opened fire with mortars and with small arms. And the fire was quite effective. So carrying 15 people over with 2 boats at the time to carry over all 2 companies, that takes quite a few trips actually. And to do that all under fire is it could be very disastrous. And in this case it was. So altogether it took them 1.5 days. They started, and then like about 12 hours later the last men from the grouping crossed the Koinka River, and there were already losses, and the troops that crossed were pinned down immediately, and they were taking losses from the first minute. Now, the next description comes from inside the 205th Brigade, a soldier's view of the situation. At one point, our artillery fired a couple of shots at them, but no avail. And then, in general, it seems that they did it only so they can later say they threw shells at the approximate directions. He reported that the Ukrainian drones were always in the sky and they had eyes on them. The whole battle happened for about 2 to 3 days. Throughout this entire time, Ukrainian birds rotated. And there was multiple of them at certain points. These were not kamikaze drones, but just simply recon drones, drones with cameras, just to monitor the situation. Immediately if one battery dies, they take the drone away, they send another one. Always eyes on the Russians, they could never hide. Then the Ukrainian mortar fire started. And thanks to the drones being up there, the mortar fire was very accurate. Throughout this entire time, Russians had radio connections with their command structure, and they sent sit reps all the time. And this is why we know what happened. By the end of the first day that the Russians were trying to dislodge the Ukrainians, half of their personnel was wounded. And the situation was very dire. They were almost unable to move, and the command leader wanted to push about 200 to 300 meters forward to change that situation, but that would have been suicide by the accounts of the Russian soldier. The commander understood that any kind of pushing forward would have been suicide since they didn't have any engineering vehicles which would have been necessary, so the commander in the end decided to withdraw from the island or from the other side of the Koinka River, go back to the Russian occupied side of the Koinka River, thus saving the lives of the other half of the grouping he had with him. Also, the wounded were taken with the grouping. The wounded were evacuated. After that, after this disastrous operation, which of likes do happen in war, the command structure at the very top started shift blaming and blaming commanders, blaming the soldiers. This is not just a simple report of why this attack failed, let's analyze it. This was looking for a scapegoat. Somebody needs to go to jail because of this disastrous operation. Who is responsible? This information came out day after day slowly, and now we have the full information. As of now, the commander of this grouping, who saved the lives of these troops because he ordered the withdrawal from this area, you know, the Russian command structure does not like retreat. He ordered to retreat to save the lives of the remaining troops. He is now removed from his position and he faces charges for treason. He's a military commander who is learning in the school, if situation requires it, you need to retreat. Like, this is what they teach. Retreat is an official part of your toolkit as a military commander. You need to retreat to save the fighting forces and fighting ability of your units. This is what the Russian commander did. He did what he was taught, and he faces charges of treason now. And at the moment, the entire 205th Battalion has been taken to Kenichesk to restore their strength because they lost a lot of manpower and there's a lot of wounded. Now, the 205th Brigade's command structure wants to save their positions, and they are also working with the Russian Ministry of Defense to find somebody to blame. So, of course, the commanders blame their inferiors. So, the commander who led this assault will be sacked. He's already sacked, actually, and he faces charges. And the soldiers who retreated also face charges. And the brigade command structure itself is working against them, because it would be them otherwise. This is just the Russian system. If there is a big loss, somebody needs to go to jail. That's how it is. Also, immediately if the soldiers got back, their phones were seized. All of the communication devices were seized, so to prevent the information from leaking out. Now, the information still leaked out by one soldier's phones who had a voice recording, and we're going to look at some voice recordings later. And this soldier faces also charges of treason right now. And charges of treason in Russia are no small thing. You can go away for like 15 years. Criminal cases have been opened against soldiers and the commander. And I'll read you the final statement of the soldier. The investigation is a complete nonsense. The truth is, we were ambushed. We could not destroy them and move further along the route. The real reasons and the occurrence of the situation and the stated circumstances are completely ignored. Now, this happens. Any kind of army, anywhere in the world, sometimes is ambushed. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are. The enemy ambushes you, you will take losses, and it's bad. Now, to put soldiers and commanders in jail for this and start criminal cases, using treason against them because they were ambushed is the Russian way of doing things. And now you know the full story of the 205th Brigade who were sent to Kozackie Lagery to dislodge the Ukrainians. As you can see, 205th separate motorized rifle brigade is still stationed here, but some of their units have been sent back to be restored, to be arrested, or to be put to jail. The Ukrainians only had to fight back, the rest is done by the Russians, they will sack their own guys. Now this is an audio recording translated by Dmitry of a Russian reporter Romanov talking to the 205th commander who was leading the assault. He's talking to one of the 205th commanders. Subordinated unit, does that tell you anything? That you need to set up some kind of duty? Товарищ полковник, there is duty in the group 2RR, right? We're losing signal every other time, right? Created the group, what's happening then? Current points, all the same, all the same. Give coordinates, where? Where's the work? Where's the information processing group? Where are they? I cannot say this word. Well, this illustrates the chaoticness of the situation, how Russian artillery, the mortar crews, as stated by the report of the soldier, they shot only so they could say that they fired and they did their task, but they didn't take their situation seriously and they didn't commit to counter-battery fire for Ukrainian artillery, which was very effective. And now they're finding who is to blame for the Russian artillery for not working properly. They're just random guys, we know it, товарищ полковник. We know all the basement heroes. We're sick of it, to be honest. I've been silent for a while, honestly, I was observing. Either you do something, or take your shoulder straps and get out. I will do your job. This is a reporter saying to a polkovnik, a high commander, that go and I will do your job. This is crazy, only in Russia. I'll go and set up communication myself. It was a lack of communication, lack of training, and entirely lack of everything, actually. The Russian mortar crews just didn't take the job seriously, and because of that, a lot of people was injured and the ambush was more deadly than it should have been. Rather than sending text to the staff, look, he was really angry. Yeah, the commander was, like the high commander was also working with the Russian Minister of Defense to find somebody to blame in his own brigade, because he wanted to save his skin. So it's not me, it's one of my, inferiors. That's how the blame game works in Russia. Now you know the full story. The Russian 205th Brigade is a sad brigade now, because ambushes happen to everyone, to Ukrainians also. But to put to jail because of it, you survived the ambush. You're lucky to be alive. It's a hell of an experience. You do feel bad because some of your friends perished. And then you will go to jail because you betrayed the motherland for 15 years. That's the grim reality. And by the way, a small detail for you, 205th Brigade was the one who mined the Novagorhovka Dam and the one who blew it up, actually. So I cannot say this is karma, but that's how it is. My friends, I found this interesting map and it was sent by one of you guys, actually. This is NASA's fire map, and it's NASA satellites detecting fires automatically all over the world. But we're looking at eastern and southern Ukraine right now, and as you can see, 1 day ago, these are all of the fires, which are usually Ukrainian drone strikes if we look at the Russian occupied side. But if we put it 1 week, look how many of them already are. Not only drone strike, also artillery strikes. But if you go to Russia, look how many fires. Artillery doesn't shoot that far. This is either just Russian fires, people set houses on fire, or it's Ukrainian drone strikes. Now, if we go to 4 weeks, 1 month, look how crazy it gets. And as you can see, of course, the Ukrainian side, Ukraine, is also bombarded by Russia with missiles and drones. But the heaviest bombardments, heaviest fires happen on the Russian occupied side of Ukraine and near the Rostov city in this area. Ukrainian drones are incredibly active. This shows us Ukrainians don't report their drone strikes into this area sometimes. And Russian Ministry of Defense also doesn't want to report it. But here we can see how many of them are. Ukrainians are incredibly active in sending these drones to Russia. It's exploding left and right in this area. So to say that Russians don't have a connection to this war and they don't feel it is false. Of course, there's a lot of wildfires also this map picks up, and we have to be knowledgeable of this. Look, for example, this far eastern part of Russia, there's no Ukrainian drones here. It's all wildfires. And my friends, now we have one soldier's description of the grim realities of the southern front, and I do hate to report this, but I feel like I have to. Pro-Ukrainian sources are always reporting these small successes or big successes that Ukraine has, but a lot of people don't want to report of what's the price of these successes. Now, I also love reporting these successes, but today we're going to do a reality check and we're gonna look at the soldier's description, Ukrainian soldier's description of the southern front. What are they facing? First of all, the environment. It's a full steppe. There is very little forest, as you can see from the maps, usually few forest belts, usually just steppes and no elevations, very small bumps, so you cannot really hide. It's all on plain fields. I mean, it's one of the more productive Ukrainian agricultural areas, which means just fields and small canals. Now these fields filled with mines and these canals turned into trenches. The soldier reports that any kind of movement you do in the southern front, where the main offensive of Ukraine is happening right now, you cannot do it secretly. Russians do see it with their drones or with their observation points, which have night vision, thermal vision and movement detectors. They do see everything you do. So the only way to attack is to attack knowing that the Russians know you're coming and just to hope that your force is enough to penetrate, or just to be a better fighter trench to trench, man to man. But you cannot use the moment of surprise in the south, because you cannot surprise anybody when they see you all the time. He says that there is something to shoot at almost under any tree they see. Immediately if you see an area, you're just gonna go through. You have to clear everything. You have to clear the land of mines. You have to clear the trees of Russian defensive positions. You have to fill the anti-tank ditches. If they reach the Dragon's Teeth, they have to demolish those, which will not be very difficult. But still, it's yet another obstacle under fire. Russians have calibrated their defensive positions and trenches, so they have firing sectors on the most likely defensive line parts that Ukrainians might force. So Ukrainians are looking at the battle maps and they determine, okay, this is not a good place to attack because of the natural, whatever they have, mountains or hills or valleys there. They choose a certain part because it has the best geographical position for their attack. Now Russians also do the same, and they anticipate where these locations are, and they have firing sectors on these locations, set in artillery and choppers ready to fire unguided missiles exactly onto the defensive lines. So against this three-layered, fired in, we have artillery, we have small arms, we have anti-tank, we have choppers. They're all pointed at this defensive line and they see the Ukrainians coming. This is what the soldier describes as you just go, you know you're gonna get hammered, and you just have to go through it. Now, if the Ukrainians have liberated some territories which they have in the south, they're saying that they can only move on designated paths, because these paths have usually also been cleared by their own armored vehicles by driving onto the mines and losing the vehicle. But at least they know there are no mines there. They cannot just, oh, it's liberated ground, we'll go everywhere, we'll set up defensive positions. When they liberate an area or push Russians out in a trench line, all of the surrounding areas need to be cleared also, which means sappers have to be brought in. It takes a lot of time for them to clear everything, and then Ukrainians can widen the bridgehead or widen the area they just liberated. And it's a very slow process with losses. Also, sometimes the soldiers are in trenches and there's a field of grass, and Russian artillery comes in and starts these small fires around the trench line, and then the soldiers hear explosions on the field because the fire is reaching Russian mines and they explode like that. This is to illustrate how much mines there are. Everything is mined. You cannot step anywhere. There is no ground or area you can step knowing there is no mines unless your own sappers have cleared it. Now the soldier describes that the armor losses, Western or Ukrainian or Soviet, it doesn't matter, they're inevitable. If you're going through this kind of situation, this kind of steel wall, pushing through it, there will be armor losses, and a lot of them. Since the Russians see you coming, they have all kind of weaponry directed at you when you're at the defensive line and trying to breach it. First 3 vehicles destroyed. Definitely next 3 might be pushed through. And he describes the most dangerous weapon that Russia is using as glide bombs. And yes, Russia is using a lot of them. They're not the most accurate if you compare it to the Western glide bombs, but they're accurate enough, and also they're huge. They're very big bombs, 500 kilogram, one ton weighing bombs, huge explosives. So even if they do miss by 10 meters, which is very normal for their GPS capacity, because it's made in Russia, it doesn't matter because the explosion is so big and the blast wave will already injure soldiers and give them concussion, so they have to leave the battlefield. And Russians are using them a lot and methodically, meaning if they don't have a target, they will just fire them on roads, just to make the roads very hard to traverse. And this will come in play when there's Rasputitsa in 2 months, 3 months. Then the glide bombs will just destroy and turn everything into mud holes. This is one soldier's view of the situation of the southern front. And it's very negative, incredibly negative. And I feel like I cannot ignore it. I wanted to bring it to you. Let me know in the comments, how does that make you feel? I feel like all Ukrainian supporters need to get this kind of information, because when situation is tough, people tend to ignore the reality. And it happens to me also. It's very hard to fight against it. This takes like knowledgeable actions, that I will look at this information. And this is what this video is all about. So we're looking at it together. And yes, it is sad and negative, but that's the reality. We have to fight through it. But my friends, in the latest news, the completely different topic that was reported a few days ago. I know Jake Bro has already reported on it. I wanted to touch upon it also. Putin is really removing any signs of Wagner from Russia. And this is how Russia actually works in the last 400 years, in the Soviet time especially. You know, this famous photo with Stalin and the deleted guy next to Stalin. Just Stalin had this guy removed because he was enemy of the state later. Just removed from any kind of photo. Now Putin is taken from the same playbook. We'll watch a video translated by Dmitry of a Wagner fighter visiting one of the Wagner cemeteries. And you remember these Wagner cemeteries, they were always very, well, grandiose and big, and they looked expensive and they looked honorable. Well, what the Russian government is doing to them now, let's see. The obelisk was opened by Yevgeny Prigozhin in Nikolaevka. Where the path is, where graves, everything has been demolished. So this was a graveyard, a full hundreds of fighters buried here with honors. What are you doing, guys? This is blasphemy. People are dying for Russia and you leveled all their graves. Yes, this is very Russian style. I visited Bucha like 3 times when I went to Kiev already. Every time I visit Bucha, actually. And there's the same thing. There was this mass grave, you remember last year it came out. And Russians had these huge piles of pavement stones there. And they planned to just bulldoze everything, all the bodies under the pavement, and put these pavement stones on top. So it would be a plot just like this and nobody would ever know. But this didn't happen because Ukrainians liberated Bucha, and now there's a huge memorial for it. But that's a Russian playbook, that's how they do things. And it's not new, it's been going on for hundreds of years already. It's just one of their tools. What are you doing? Are you not afraid of God? Crosses of all the dead guys. Notice the year 2023. So each of these crosses, let's think about it for a moment, represents one dead man. One family without a father, one family without a brother or a son. And the government is just, I guess they're throwing them away or burning them. It's a very sad sight. Even if, Wagner is the enemy, these guys are dead. I mean, respect the dead, They're buried, their graves are there. Why dig up the graves? Why are you going to make the world better with this? It's an insult to people whose relatives are here and entire families who come to see the grave sites of the fathers and brothers. I mean, it's a parking lot now. It's very sad. All Wagner reds dumped in a pile. And here, where the work is going, where graves... This was all graves. Erased from existence. There was no graves here. In 100 years, nobody will know. It's just a pavement. Nikolaev Cemetery, unclear what's going on. All the crosses and wreaths are collected. And I'm sure this is going on other places also. Putin is trying to erase Wagner from history. No idea what they're doing here. Graves are here, the gravel is now. Prigozhin opened this obelisk. Even in Estonia right now, in the past 2 years, there have been movements to take all the former Soviet memorials, Soviet mass graves. For example, there were battles between Germany and Soviet Union in Estonia, and there was these mass graves still right now when the Russian people bring flowers sometimes. The Estonian government has decided to take away these mass graves and eliminate them altogether. But you know what is done? They dig them up, they eliminate the Soviet symbolics, which is right. But underneath there are Red Army fighters buried in mass graves, and they are treated with respect. They are dug up, they're put to separate boxes, and they are buried again with a priest and with official honors. So not to disrespect them, although the Soviets were occupiers, still respect the dead. And although these are occupier symbols and we want to demolish these, the dead underneath get buried in a graveyard properly, with honors, with the priests, with words read to them that may you have peace and all that kind of stuff. So this is happening in Russia, in a country who is religious and the keeper of traditional values, and these are the traditional values. It's just bulldoze the graveyard. My friends, now the time is here to butcher some Patreon names, and under every video I get these comments of how I say these names. I just say them as Estonian. If you would come to Estonia, you would talk to a 60-year-old guy who doesn't speak at all English. He would say your name like this. 5 new patron names. Kari 849. In Ukraines cardboard kamikaze drone video 8.33 kuni 8.35. Your mic made weird noises. Please fix. That is the name of the Patreon. Okay, I understood. My mic was broken. Carlos Recca de Sousa. I remember saying your name before. Patrique. Evelina Randolfsson. Evelina, that's a female name. Whoa. We get like 1 in a year of female Patreons. So you are one woman in an endless sea of sausage fest. So congratulations. Thank you to the Patreons. And if you like my channel, you know what to do. Also, my friends, please check out my Instagram account. I'm trying to be more active there. It's not as easy. I'm not very good at this Instagram stuff, but I'm directing you in every video there, so maybe I'll make it. And until my next video, my friends, stay cool and bye-bye.